Hello, everybody, and welcome to our roundtable talk on preparing and responding to emergencies involving individuals with developmental disabilities, brought to you by the National Volunteer Fire Council and First Alert. I'm your host, Mary Kay Oppie. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Vision 2020, and I am the National Project Manager for a school-based program called Sound Off with the Home Fire Safety Patrol. Today, I am joined by Monica Colby, Fire and Life Safety Specialist at Rapid City Fire Department, Tom Felter, founder of the Emily Talk and longtime first responder, and Brian Fogt, fire service veteran and advocate for fire safety involving those with autism. For those of you who may not know, March is Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, and we were thrilled to find out that we have about 150 of you registered, which we think speaks to the importance of this topic, and we're just so glad you all chose to spend your time with us this morning. It's the perfect time for first responders to learn how to adapt to different communications needs to reach all segments of the community. Today's discussion will focus on how responders can better communicate fire and life safety messages to individuals living with developmental disabilities and better respond to emergencies involving this at-risk population. This knowledge will help ensure that your community risk reduction and training plans best serve all members of your community. Before we jump into today's discussion, I'd like to take a few minutes to let our panelists introduce themselves. I'd like to start with Monica.
Hello, thank you, Mary Kay. I'm Monica Colby with the Rapid City Fire Department of South Dakota. I'm the proud mama of a college student and Eagle Scout who's on the autism spectrum. And my job in a nutshell is to try and make sure that people change behavior and environment so they never need the fire department. And if they do, that they're going to survive.
Thank you. Well done. Tom, will you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Mary Kay. My name is Tom Felter. I'm in Hebron, Indiana, outside of Chicago. I'm a paramedic with Northwest Health Porter. I've been in emergency services for some form or for another since 1986. Been on the ambulance for 27 years, and that's me.
And we're going to learn a little bit more about your family and your background in just a moment. But before we do that, Brian is having a little technical difficulty, so we're seeing his face and hearing his voice. Will you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Brian Fogt. I'm from Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. I'm a shift lieutenant with the Horsham Fire Department and battalion chief at the Woolgrove Fire Department. I've been teaching for the last 15 years about autism awareness to emergency responders. That was something that was personal to me.
Okay, thank you, Brian. We were getting a little bobble in your audio. We're going to track that, but let's just jump in. Before we get going, a little general conversation. When we're talking about communications and education for folks with developmental disabilities, the whole issue of language, what language to use, comes up. Can one of you please talk a little bit about the proper kind of language to use when we're addressing this audience?
For me, my experience in dealing not only with my son, but with people on the spectrum specifically, is using first person conversation. So I try to align with that person in any direction, question, conversation I have with that person. I try to utilize their name, not asking a 10-part question, very short, simple, allow them time to respond. And then if it seems like they're overwhelmed or upset, offer something else to them, whether it be a whiteboard, whether it be a tablet or something that maybe they aren't able to communicate, or maybe they just don't want to. I mean, I learned that with my son. Like, if he had nothing to say, he wasn't saying it, but he would do good with writing it down. So I think identifying with them, finding their name and addressing them, and only one person. If you're part of a multiple person crew, let one person be the voice, let one person be the advocate for the responders.
Okay, so don't overwhelm the person. And I have heard the term person first language, which, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, has to do with not using labels to describe people. It's a person with a particular issue. It's not a label that we apply to that person. Did I get that right?
Yeah. Yes.
I'm sorry, Brian.
All right,
go ahead.
Tom. Go ahead. You go.
Okay, yeah, no, that's exactly right. Emily has Down syndrome. It's not the girl with, it's not the Down syndrome girl. She's a girl with Down syndrome. Regardless of the disability, address the person first, or the name first, and then the whatever the disability is comes later.
So Tom, if you're out and you're working a scene, you never know what you're going to get, right?
Correct.
How would
Yeah.
you recognize that you're in a situation where there might be someone with a developmental disability?
Well, in the case of Down syndrome, and when we do our presentations, I tell everybody Emily carries her disability on her face. If you know those features of Down syndrome, you can pick her out of a crowd. Even in this COVID world where everybody's masked up, her eyes give her away. What is tougher, and what Brian speaks to, is trying to identify folks that may be on the spectrum, because there is no autism look. They could look like anybody.
Mhm.
So you have to kind of tread softly until you figure out, if they don't tell you, or the caregivers don't tell you, that sometimes can be tough to understand that there is something going on. And like I
Let's
said,
get
with
into that a
Emily,
little more, Tom. You were talking about your daughter, Emily. Can you tell us more about her and how it's raised your awareness about this whole topic?
absolutely. Emily is 27 years old. She lives at home with her mom, my wife, and I. But she's 27. She has Down syndrome, so she has all or most of the traits and the medical conditions that go along with Downs. But she loves music, and she loves to ride her bike. She's upstairs right now listening to Taylor Swift on 2 different devices at the same time. I've asked her to keep that music down, but she may not. She might show up in this camera shot.
Before this started, we were all kind of hoping she would, so we'll see.
So, but yeah, she's before she was born, I didn't know anything about any of that. So over the last 27 years, she has taught me and everyone around her to recognize her and understand what she can do and what she can't do, and just help her navigate through life. But more importantly, she's helping everybody around her navigate through life.
So what
She
is
doesn't
Down?
know that, but that's
What
what she's
is
doing.
Down syndrome, Tom?
Down syndrome is a genetic disorder, and the very short, simple, oversimplified answer is it's a genetic anomaly where the 21st chromosome in all your cells has an extra chromosome. It's trisomy 21 is the official name of it. But that manifests itself in those facial features, an intellectual disability, short stature, learning disabilities, but the fact that those facial features are almost always prominent. I mean, sometimes they're very subtle, just like anybody else. We're all different, so it's not an absolute person to person. But once you understand what you're looking for, you can, like I said, you can pick her out of a crowd.
And Tom, what would you like your fellow first responders to know about if they're responding and they meet Emily or someone else with Down syndrome? What would you like them to know?
They need to be patient. That's what she has taught us, that's a pretty big message that Brian brings forth as well. You got to be patient, and you have to understand that if I come into your house as an ambulance crew, that causes a lot of anxiety just on the surface. If you have an intellectual disability
For
and have
anybody.
trouble with, Emily is very routine oriented. And if that routine doesn't involve police, fire, EMS coming into her home. So if that happens, we just have to be patient and work through this process at her speed, not my speed.
Mhm. So some of you haven't had the chance yet to see a movie that's coming out about Tom and his family, particularly about Emily. I was lucky because I'm hosting this. I got to see a sneak preview, and it was just great. I mean, it really, when you talk about patience, you can see Tom and his family demonstrating this. One of the colleagues on your documentary was talking about how being patient is not exactly what firefighters and first responders are known for. And in fact, the whole job has to do with moving quickly, making fast decisions. And I think one of the things Emily is trying to teach us is, for her, that's not the right way to handle the situation. Can you
Absolutely.
give us a
I'm
little
sorry.
more detail about that? What should a first responder do when they first arrive?
Oh, man. Well, again, just understand that she is going to move at her pace. We are always on Emily time. If she's not ready to go somewhere, we're not going. And that's just normal day-to-day stuff. You pile on any sort of emergent situation that, her anxiety level goes up, and I can talk to her till I'm blue in the face about what we need to do. But if she's not ready to do it, we're not doing it.
Mhm. And didn't you tell me, Tom, about a situation where there were first responders that did not handle the situation
Yeah,
well?
yeah.
And
The
can you tell us
genesis
about that?
for, I'm sorry, yes, I will. The genesis for what Emily and I do was an incident that occurred in Maryland in 2013. A young man by the name of Ethan Saylor was in a movie theater, walked back out of the theater, went back into the theater without a ticket. They tried to remove him because he didn't have a ticket, but he had Down syndrome and he couldn't comprehend that he needed to leave. Long story short, he wound up dying because they tried to physically remove him from the theater, and it just went south from there, and he died over the price of a movie ticket because they weren't patient. There was no reason for him to leave that theater under those circumstances, but they tried to make him leave, and it like I said, it went south. And I allude to that in my presentation and say, if that's Emily in that theater, she's not going to leave. So if there's no reason for her to leave, then don't make her leave. When she's ready to leave, she'll leave, but not till then.
So it was this incident that kind of inspired your work, and you and Emily worked together, right, to raise awareness for first responders about how to just handle situations like this
Yeah,
better.
yeah, absolutely. Ethan Saylor's situation was what pushed me to do what we're doing now. His mom, Patty, since Ethan's death, Patty has gone on a crusade of sorts to help others raise awareness. There's all kinds of programs like we do across the country, grassroots efforts to teach people about how to deal with people with any sort of disability. The state of Maryland, as a result of Ethan's death, the police academies there now do a much better job of training their folks on how to interact with folks with disability. But that's the kind of things that we are all doing in our own little piece of the world to try to help people understand that regardless of the disability, I have to adapt to what he or she wants to do as opposed to what I want them to do.
So I had a question about respect for the person you're helping. As you were saying, is the best thing to keep trying to make the connection with Emily, or is it better for the first responders to maybe talk with the caregiver, or what's the best way to be respectful too?
Well, she's 27 years old, so I tell people, you talk to her like she's 27, but don't always expect 27-year-old answers. She does have an intellectual disability, so she might not even answer you. But start with her. Talk to her like she is, like she's the adult that she is. But when she doesn't answer or gives you answers that aren't really helping, that's when you look to the caregivers or the parents to fill in the gaps.
Okay, that's great. All right, well, let's keep going. Thank you, Tom. Anything else you'd like to share before we move on to Brian?
No, ma'am.
You're
Thank
going to
you.
have plenty more time to talk and to answer questions as we move forward. Okay, Brian, coming to you, we understand, or I understand, that you have a member of your family who's on the autism spectrum, and I want to make sure we all understand what that means. And could you tell us a little bit about your situation and how you came to this work?
Sure. So I have a 22-year-old named Daniel. He was diagnosed at 3 with autism. So through all the challenges, back then, there's so many more. Today, there are so many more things readily available. There was no book, Autism for Dummies, or anything back then, and a lot of it was tribal knowledge or things that you found from other people. And as he progressed, I kind of thought about my job as a firefighter paramedic. Like, how many times did I interact with someone that maybe had autistic traits that I didn't know or wasn't identified in? How would I want my son treated? So I guess that's kind of how I started. I'd been a state instructor for a long time. So I started putting a program together, and 15 years later, I've done about 15,000 people trained, in addition to a training video and another training program that was just launched through the National Volunteer Fire Council the other day. So I think humbly, my son has made more difference than he will ever know, because I would have never got engaged if it wasn't for him. He'll go out and teach with me, and like we call it Daniel time. It's kind of funny. In his high school final program, he put, I define me, not autism.
So I've often heard it turns out my daughter-in-law's dad is a retired developmental pediatrician, and his specialty was autism. And he taught me a lot about the whole issue of the spectrum. And one of the things when we were prepping for this session, you were explaining that if you've met one person with autism, one person on the spectrum, you've met one person on the spectrum. Is that right? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So to follow Tom, where you can see Emily's disability, someone with autism, you can't necessarily determine by their look. There's no scarlet letter. So what you look for is mannerisms, things that they may do, whether it's not making eye contact, whether it's stimming, which they're trying to calm themselves, or they're excited about something.
Ryan, let me have you pause there, because some folks may not know what that means. Stimming, does it have to do with the word stimulation, or what is that?
So it could be, I go to a call, or the fire truck drives down the street and you see someone jumping up and down or flapping their arms or standing on their toes. It's their body's way of kind of addressing that adrenaline rush. And the worst thing you could do, if you watch Monica, if I stopped her from doing that, I would make things 400 times worse. It's like an understanding. It's respecting space. It's when I train people, I want them to have look at the big picture, and we can't be in a rush all the time. Sometimes you got to put the brakes on. And if it's something that's going to, the house is on fire, we need to rescue them, then we need to rescue them. But if we have time, then that could mean the difference between me helping someone out and having to restrain them, medicate them, all things that time could allow. And I think empathy towards the understanding that communication with a lot of times emergency responders, especially on the EMS side, are really, really bad with using caretakers' information, because it'll be like, this is the only way you can move the person, or use a small needle, all 100-fold what's out there. But this is the time where you really want to ask somebody, hey, what's going to be a calming thing? What can I do to help facilitate this? Is there something that they like that will help that transition? Sometimes I'll look around a room, and a lot of times you'll see an attachment to icons or figurines, something that is a mainstay for them. And I had an experience with an 18-year-old that was tearing his room apart. And I just called out, I'm like, hey, what's that? Who's that R2-D2 guy? Why is he black? And I got schooled for the next 10 minutes about Star Wars. Okay. But he went from 100 miles an hour to having a conversation with me. And that was the difference. It took more than we normally spend on the scene of a call. But at the end, he walked out with me and went to talk to the crisis person, and he didn't have to be restrained. And it was a positive outcome to the point that the mother, will bring him down the firehouse now, because he's like, I need to let off steam. Can I go talk to Brian? And that's a win.
So I have a question for all of you, and then I'd like to hear a little bit more about the training program that I think you participated in with NVFC. But before we do that, this is a question I've got in my head. What about physical touch? Is that something you recommend or don't recommend?
If you don't have to touch that person, then I would not. I wouldn't just go up and grab them, or unless it was you're saving their life. They're going out in traffic or they're in duress. If I, on the medical side, if I'm going to assess someone, what I will do is show them what I'm going to touch first. And I may not do a head to toe survey if they're having an asthma attack. I might, hey, I'm going to take this and I'm going to listen to your chest, and I'll present where I'm going to do on myself before then. And then maybe I'll let them touch the stethoscope and put it there, or hold my hand while I'm doing that.
Brian, tell us a little bit more about the NVFC. I see Sierra is putting it in the chat. It's brand new, a series of training modules. Can you tell us a little bit? Do you demonstrate that kind of technique in this training, or is there what's in the NVFC training?
It's just kind of a high-level profile of some things that can support someone within an operation. So I kind of condensed 4 hours of training into a half hour.
And do you talk about stuff like that, like what, how to make a connection with the person? Yes. Awesome.
Yes, some of it is also about if you can know ahead of time. And I know every 911 system and CAD system is different for emergency services, but if I could know at 123 Main Street that they're on the second floor, there's someone with autism, and what the calming things. So it has what we have in my township. So any ambulance, fire truck, or police car coming to a certain address will have that information in it. A picture shot, a full body shot, things that are calming, things that might set them off, medications, allergies, stuff like that. The police can actually search for a name as well. So that they search a name. So if they looked at my son's name, his premise alert stuff would come up. So that's kind of important. So it has that, and it has an example where someone wrote on a garage door, an autistic person lives here. Yes, I really did have to go to this extreme for the police. So it's obviously that was a horrible encounter. And I think knowing ahead of time can forewarn you for some things as well.
And technology is helping us. Tom, do you have that kind of capability in your department that you know in advance when you're responding?
Sometimes, but not always. There is a program, I don't know if Brian has already talked about it, but in our county, there's some Smart 911, which is a program that dispatchers have, and they can fill that up with all kinds of information. And that information is tied to any phones that I tie to my account. So if we call 911, the dispatcher's screen will populate with all kinds of information about Emily. And it's not just about that. It's about if you have animals, if you want to include information about your utility shutoffs, anything like that, that are going to help the emergency responders. In our case, that's information about Emily that is very helpful for them.
How about you, Monica? Anything about knowing, alerting in advance? I think we're going to talk about home safety visits in a minute, but what about the technology available?
We don't use that very much. We've just found a lot of things change so often, and people move and those kinds of things. So we rely more on, we do de-escalation training. We have training from Niagara University that's great about how to respond as EMS and fire, and there's some specifically for 911 operators, some specifically for police. I've had to respond to people with disabilities. We're looking for things when we come in, and we love to have like a paper on your door or on your fridge that tells us your medical information and what things would help and that kind of information. And on the phone,
a file of life idea.
Yeah, exactly. In case of emergency on your phone, you can put those kinds of notes in there that we can get in without unlocking it. So having those things on you, we're kind of relying more on the person giving us that updated information.
Okay. Brian, back to you. Is there something more that you would like first responders, EMS providers to know when they're responding to emergencies? One thing might be just the sound of the alarm. I understand can be upsetting for some folks on the spectrum, but not all. What more should first responders know?
I think when you look at autism, imagine every one of your senses being ingrained or altered, whether it was loud noises, whether it's bright lights, whether it's 5 people overcrowding, whether it's the touch of plastic or metal on me. I could have, back to your point of we met one person with autism, you could have all of those things, you could have some of those things. Loud noises is typically one of the kind of the mainstays is, when you're approaching if you can let off the siren a little bit before, if you know there's someone with autism there. And again, to the point, you don't always know that. But if I know someone's there, like I will try to let off the lights and sirens if it's safe for me to do so. With that, I would also think about turning radios down. We carry on all our apparatus, and we put about 150 kits out in the last year at no cost to emergency services. Something we call a sensory kit, which is a bag that has a whiteboard with a marker in it. It has noise reducing headphones. It has dark tinted safety glasses. It has some sensory toys, a fidget spinner, some of the other tactile sensory things. And it's one of those things that we can offer to someone that, may not want to communicate with us or isn't able to communicate with us, that may help them calm. Like if they can put the earmuffs on and cover their ears because they're overwhelmed or the scene is bright or it's worrying them. The other side, I think what responders is, what are you going to do with that person? Like from the fire side, 75% of the fatalities involving autistic individuals at fires, they were outside and went back in. That should scare every firefighter. It scared the hell out of me as a fire chief, as a dad. So we kind of worked out, and anywhere I train, this is the conversation you need to have with the police department today. That if we have someone on the spectrum or with some other intellectual disability, or whether it could even be Alzheimer's, because they're very prone to wandering, we're putting them in the back of a patrol car because they can't get out. Bottom line.
Brian, tell us the name of that kit again.
Sensory kit.
A sensory kit. And do all your rigs carry these?
All of our fire trucks, command vehicles, and ambulances have it. And then we put 150 other ones out in the communities around us, our mutual aid partners.
And can you give us again the list of things that are in that kit?
I think, well, maybe towards the end, I'll put a list up. It has a picture of it.
Awesome.
That way it doesn't throw me out of Zoom again.
Okay. Okay, we'll make sure for those of you who are listening, this session is being recorded, and there are lots of great links to resources, and we'll make sure that the contents of this sensory kit is included, because there have been questions that I've noticed, and I'm also curious. Okay, Brian, last thoughts before we move on to Monica?
I think one thing, right, with someone with autism is, because someone's nonverbal doesn't mean they won't listen to you or don't hear you. And if I'm speaking to someone with autism where they tell me they're nonverbal, whether I would communicate the same exact way. I would use their name, I would give direction, and allow alternate communication styles. Like if someone's writing it down or using a picture board, that's communication. It's something that we're used to the spoken word, and you have to open your horizons that there's more than one way to communicate with somebody.
That's lovely. I also really liked your point about, situational awareness and looking in the room to see something that might help you connect with that person. That was also a great idea. Teresa Airwood has just told us that the National Autism Association website has information about these kits as well. So thank you all for chiming in on the chat. Okay, let's move to my friend Monica Colby, who is a fellow CRR advocate. She works with us on Vision 2020. And actually, for those of you who don't know, Vision 2020 is having our 8th National Symposium for Model Performance in CRR coming up in 2024, in February 2024. And Monica is the person who oversees the process to select the model programs presented at this symposium through peer review. So
the call is currently open. So if you have an amazing program that has to do with any of this, we would love to learn more about it. We can even give you a coach to help you.
And not only that, but we're trying really, really hard to make sure that our volunteer departments are well represented. So model programs from volunteers are like gold to us. So if any of you have them, now we will be looking for data, because that's the kind of symposium this is. What have you done? What have you measured? And but Monica and her coaches can help you tell your story in the best way. We could go on and on, but let's not. Let's go back to Monica. The thing that I most wanted to talk with you about are resources available to the community to educate. So please tell us about, first of all, tell us your situation and how you came to this work, and then help our audience here know what can help them.
All right, sure. So I've been doing this. This is my 25th year. I'm so excited. So I've been involved in education and just trying to reach everyone, right? And I've been doing that for so long, and then had a son that was diagnosed with autism and just got even more into these kinds of things. But one of my superpowers is being able to take difficult messages, really complicated things, and try and find an easy way to express them. And that's really one of the advantages that fire service and medical professionals have, is that we're curious, and our job is about trying to find the root cause. We're not just trying to hurry and take care of something. We're reading the smoke, and we're looking for the seat of the fire and the flow path so that we can get in there and put the fire out. We don't assume that someone is on like alcohol. We're first going to make sure that their blood sugar is right. And so that goes along with the same things, just treating everyone with respect and looking for some of those root causes of what behavior we're seeing, or how someone's maybe not interacting with us the way that we think they should. We shouldn't grab anyone without asking their permission. We don't just do stuff unless we really have to. And so it's the same thing for everyone. And when you see that something's not communicating well, then get creative and find we feel like we need to find another way to try and interact with that person. So that's a real advantage that we have.
What are the best things, Monica, that you would recommend? You talked about the Niagara program, and
Niagara University.
It's going to be in the link. Can you tell us a little bit about what they would get if they took that?
Yeah, so that is, there's a couple of hours of overview of the kinds of things we're talking about, but specifically you're responding. How will people with different abilities present themselves? What things can you look for? What things will help? And then very specifically there's a couple of hours with video of an EMS professional coming and talking with someone with autism, or coming and talking with someone with a bipolar disorder. Now, what's going to work? What's not going to work? How can you do this well? There's a lot of it online, and you can do train the trainers, and it's free and available. Just go use it. There's a lot of that.
Program is that one?
Well, if you went to take everything and study all of it, it'll take a little while, but you've got just a couple of hours on the overview, and then each specific type of abilities are gone into in great depth.
Okay. And then with the NVFC program, which is brand new, and it features Brian, as I understand it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I didn't have time to take the course. I meant to, but it's grant time, and I didn't have the time.
It's a great way to get started too, and especially when you're time limited. And so that's the kind of thing that have everyone take that one, right?
Okay.
Niagara University, have everyone take that first one. Have one person go and learn how and bring it back to everyone, or watch that online. And then have a couple of people that are going to become specialists and learn everything else. And then for my department, so we have certain paramedics that take all of the training, and then others, when they know that there's someone in their community that they're responding to, especially if it's someone on a regular basis, then they as a crew have gone to learn more about it. So the same thing, one of the advantages of being a volunteer firefighter is your community. You know what's going on. And so you can then pick out and learn more about what you need to know for your community and what's going on.
One of the lovely things about preparing for this session was the number of folks who signed up for it, who really want to know how to do a better job. So I think that speaks so well of the community, and I applaud you all for that. So Monica, let's talk for a minute about home safety visits, something near and dear to both of our hearts. I will say that for Vision 2020, my recent assignment was to write a new guide on home safety visits that'll be coming out shortly. And it features 8 different case studies from different types of fire departments that have integrated home safety visits into their programming. And there are big cities and there are small cities, volunteer department, anybody can do home safety visit. One thing to know is that of all the things that a fire department can do to reduce fire risk, home safety visits have been proven to be the most effective intervention. And this has been proven in the UK, in Canada, and more right here in the United States. But Vision 2020 just worked together with Johns Hopkins on a national survey to find out what is going on in our country with CRR and fire and life safety education. And that report will be out soon. But one of the things that kind of worried me was that the respondents said that only about 22% of US fire departments say they're doing home safety visits. It's the most effective thing you can do, but less than a quarter of the departments are doing it regularly. So, Monica, to
Right.
you.
It feels overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
It seems like that. And there's so many reasons not to do it, but nothing works as well as being in the person's bedroom and talk about their options and what's going on with them. We've even done that specifically with different buildings. With our schools, we started working with our police department to figure out a way to streamline the message, to make things easier. And we've kind of gone back, let the pendulum swing a little bit old school. And our message for everyone is whenever I suspect that there's an emergency, some sort of threat, that I shelter behind a closed door, I stop what I'm doing, I get ready to evacuate, and then I look to see where is the safest place for me to be and can I get there safely, and then continue really reevaluating that. And that's for every kind of emergency that's out there. It fits in with active shooter kinds of things. It fits in with everything, but definitely with fires too. So generally outside is the best. And the same thing when you go into someone's home. Yes, we want them to get outside. We only have 1 or 2 minutes before that hallway is filled with smoke, and even staying low is not going to work because the fire is taking out all the oxygen. We've got to get out. But there's a lot of good reasons why people can't do that right away. And there's a lot of options. And so being able to look specifically at their building, their needs, their resources, and tailoring this message to them is what's so effective, because it means more and they get their questions answered. So some things that a lot of people don't realize now, we've known for a long time that doors help protect us from the heat and the fire and keep most of the smoke out. That timeline's getting shorter and shorter as our fires are getting, the things inside the home are burning more. But we also, elevators are being designed smarter. So in a lot of buildings, the elevators will continue to work during a fire as long as there's no smoke on any of the lobbies for that elevator. And so that becomes a complicated message, but really it's actually simple. If the elevator works, use it. And if it doesn't, don't use it. So, that's the way that they function.
So
now.
Monica, help us understand, how does this apply to the folks with disabilities? Like, what do you recommend in terms of education for folks who may need it delivered a little differently?
Right. So we're going to, that's where in the home is still better. Sometimes you're in a big group and you're trying to kind of mesh it all there. But if you can then take the time to be there in their home with them and look and see, okay, you have to be locked in your room. So some people that elope and the everyday problem is they're going to be locked in. So what can we do to figure out the solution? And then how can I communicate this with you? Because I'm there, it's a lot easier to find that way. They're in their home. They know how to communicate. They've got the tools there. We can do that. How much do they have caregivers? Do they have neighbors that need to know what's going on? How much can we intervene and work together on this? Just in general, like everything else, trying to get out the message in many different ways. I'm going and talking with specific groups. I'm putting it on Facebook. I'm putting out on paper and easy to read, keeping things very simple, pictograms, lots of different ways of trying to share that message, trying to make sure to reach everyone that I can.
So I hear you say that home safety visits can be a big task, but you don't have to do a visit to every single home in your community. And if you know that there's a home where folks are living with a particular need, that's the home you prioritize to do the home safety visit, is it?
Right, exactly. So like I don't do door-to-door home visits, and I just know that some do, and that has a really good impact and bigger than just the homes that you go to. But I go upon request and of those that have a greater need, right? We go to the school and we talk about smoke alarms, and there's kids that come back and say, I don't have any. Great, I've got partners. We're going to come now to your home and we're going to talk about what's going on and make sure that these work. I have someone who has a disability and they're concerned because they do have to lock someone in because they might elope, and that's okay because the everyday problem
Risk is
is
high.
everyday problem, right? And the fact that a fire might happen. So we go and we talk about what their options are, what you can do. Can we get fire sprinklers in there? And that's something that we allow you if you own the home to install them yourself. We figure if you can wire the fire, you can plumb the sprinkler to save yourself. But so we can help with some of those kinds of things, but also what are some options? It's okay to teach the caregivers to go around the outside of the house and come in the window, close the door, rescue the person, right? Teach them the things that we do so they're not going through the hallways. If they're going to go into a building, here's another option for you. Is the plan that they cannot get out on their own? They have doorbells they can ring. They have an emergency button they can push. They're going to wait at the window. They're going to wait at a door. They're going to go outside of the home, but they need to be fenced in, right? So that they don't leave the scene. Those things that have been so intrinsically, that's not okay for the fire service. It's okay.
Get over
We'll
it.
work something out.
Yeah. Tom and Brian, can you weigh in because you both have situations? Does this ring a bell with you guys?
Yeah, Brian's training video, he talks about the fact that his son, my daughter, are very routine oriented. They want things a specific way. The term he uses is concrete thinker. Emily is a concrete thinker, and that's something I've stolen from Brian now, that term. But to the point of fire alarms and leaving the house, if I train Emily to always leave me the front door, and Brian talks about that in his video, but the front door is not accessible, I don't know that she's going to know to go to another door.
Yeah.
So somehow we have to figure out how to make those options available to her and understand that there are options. If you can't get to this door that we've gone out 100 times, we're gonna have to go out another door, another window. That's tough for Emily. That's tough for anybody that's has an intellectual disability. They
I
can't.
think it's tough for a lot of people.
Yeah,
Even
yeah, right. Brian, he calls them concrete thinkers, and it's the perfect term.
yeah. Brian, what about you? What would you like folks to know about this practice, this visiting to know in advance? Is that something that you would recommend as well?
Absolutely. I think the more you can get out into the communities, the better it is, especially with someone that that you want to align with, and someone you want to have some type of bond with, to understand that, hey, we're there to help you. For me, as far as it, I had programmable smoke detectors. That was my voice, not only given my son, but it was the rest of our house, that it was my voice giving him instructions, because in that concrete world, if I can't get out the front door, maybe I'm still going out the front door. But I gave him options with my voice giving him direction in the smoke alarm beeping.
It's
And I
reassuring.
tested. I came back from a fire and I'm like, let me see if this will work. So I pushed the smoke detector and shut the door. And he literally I could hear him get up and go down and touch the door. So part of it is about the rules, at least for him. If you say this is how it should be, that's how it should be. And that's why for his smoke detector, I wanted him to have options, because that one choice isn't the only choice that you can have in an event of an emergency.
Okay, I'm paying attention to you, and I'm also looking at the chat, which has been wonderfully active. So to all of you who are participating, thank you for that. Some of you, I think, have some resources of your own as well that you have created, which is really awesome. I saw a comment about making this mandatory at the National Fire Academy, this kind of training. I didn't realize it wasn't. I guess there isn't training on this at NFA. Interesting, because it is so, so important. All right, so let's see. Folks, this is the time that we are going to welcome your questions or your comments. The best thing to do is to put that in the chat for us, but let's just talk a little bit more about how we can better prepare in advance for emergencies with these folks. Like, where do you find them? Where are you looking? If they're not coming to you, you haven't been able to identify them yet. What kinds of places do you look to find folks who may need your help?
Also, I'll start with this
Right
one.
in, please.
Community risk reduction starts with community risk assessment, and that's a formalized way of looking in your community to see what's happened before and what populations you have, who is in your community. It's something we've been doing for a long time. I bet most of the volunteer departments, whether they've written it down or not, already kind of know. But looking for different care facilities, are there language barriers in any of your neighborhoods? Do you have schools or daycare that are specifically for adults or for people with special needs? And just knowing what's out there can make a difference. When you start looking and talking with your partners, do the doctors in town know? They can probably tell you what you've got going on and who are your other partners and what other services are going on, and have them help you point out to you what's needed in the community.
A couple of folks in our chat have mentioned the role of fire chaplains and for training not only for first responders, but I love that idea because, these are people who are helping folks in spiritual ways, in homes, have a trusted relationship. I thought that was a really great idea. Okay.
And your auxiliary is another great way to get out and find out what's going on in your community, that you've got people there that are in touch with what's happening.
So I have a question for you guys. I'm noticing, I love it. The chat is very, as I say, very active with other places, Illinois Fire Service Institute, forgive me for not going back, but there have been several of you who have talked about other places where there are additional resources. Is there a place where emergency responders, individuals or organizations come together to kind of like a peer group of folks who are working on various kinds of disabilities and how to do a better job? Do you have a place where you guys can hang out or have a conference on it? Or, that's a great Fire Act grant idea.
Right? It's kind of spread around to lots of different places, but I don't know if there's one home for any of that.
Well, Sierra is saying volunteer voices from the NVFC is a great place to start. Online members, there's the link she's putting up for us. To me, it's like the fire service is so peer-to-peer oriented. We trust a peer who has done something. It's a great way to share information. And I think that would be so helpful. Look at the interest here. It looks like there are a lot of guys and women on this call who would want to be involved in an ongoing conversation. Okay, super. So let me see. I got distracted. I need to look at my list here. Okay, so Monica was just talking about the role of the auxiliary. You may not have folks who are first responders and trained to get into the weeds with some of this, but there may be somebody, a retired teacher, a fire chaplain who is. So making sure we take advantage of all of our assets. Okay, what else, guys, before we wrap up today's session?
So I've got one more. We were starting to talk about smoke alarms and fire sprinklers and some of those. There's a lot of good technology out there that's available. There are stoves that don't start on fire. There are alarms that have the pre-recorded messages so that it does the beep, beep, beep in a lower, not so harsh tone. And then it tells you what to do to get out immediately. There's vibrating. There's detection that then vibrates the bed, which wakes up everyone except for the young adult intoxicated male better than just noise. And so those are available out there. There's whole systems that can be purchased that set up with your timers and alarm and your doorbells, and they can talk to your smartphones and your watches. And there's a lot out there that you may not realize there's technology that can help.
But so Monica, where would people go? Is there that, again, I keep thinking of how can we make this easier? Is there a place, or maybe NVFC
My
can
website?
take-
No, yeah.
What is
No, I
your
think that would be
website?
good because there's, trying
Yeah.
to keep up with that list is difficult. It'd be
Yeah.
good to have stuff like that. Most of the time I go to places like Harris Communications or websites that specialize with people with more severe disabilities that need technology, with hearing loss specifically, or traumatic brain injury. And they usually have a lot of devices on there that are available, especially if you look like for traumatic brain injury, because that's people who often don't have the same kind of memory and need reminders and need physical things to happen. And so those websites, I find devices that are amazing that help. I know there was one years ago that you talked about that. I mean, even the clothing iron that lifts itself up, right? So it doesn't stay
Right, I
down when
remember
you
that.
can't use your wrist and things like that.
Mhm.
So, but one place to try and house all of that, I think that's difficult, but I tend to find the most comprehensive locations.
Did you say you do have a website of your own?
Oh, of course. Rapid City Fire Department's kind of hard to find everything on there, but rcgov.org. And I do have a handout I'm happy to share. We'll get this on here that I use for people with disabilities and caregivers that just have lists of, did you know this technology exists? And here's a few places to go find it.
I think that would
Amazon is
be-
a great place.
I think that would be just, because really in today's world, who has time to do all this research? And if there's a peer who's used it and you trust it, Monica's top favorites, I think that would really be awesome. So let's see, Sierra's also talking about, it's not just developmental disabilities, although March is the month that we're focusing on that slice, but there are also folks who are challenged by loss of hearing, sight, other cognitive kind of limitations. Is there something you could advise about those kinds of groups as well?
So it's the same thing. Every single home is different. Every single combination of occupants is different. Every person is different in their abilities. And so getting to be able to get to that one-on-one, those options. And a lot of those things are the same. The pucks that work they were invented for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, people who take their hearing aids out at night when they sleep, things like that. And so that works for everyone and makes things better. There are little things, little raised stickers that you can put on things to make it easier to find what button to push so that you don't set the popcorn for too long. I mean, there's all sorts of amazing things out there. And you have experts in your state that are experts on disabilities and helping people within the workforce and helping people to adjust to the world and rely on them, see what's going on, what they can do to help.
So I just saw something in the chat that I want to throw out to you guys, because if I can find it again, it had to do, it's from Scott DBN. One issue is complacent responders. They won't attend this type of training. I've seen responders from both fire and EMS who would not look for this kind of training, let alone attend it. So what do we say to our peers out there about the importance of this? How do you deal with the fact that some of your members just don't want to go there?
So I'd love to hear what other people want to think. One thing that we've done, it's that sitting around the table and talking and telling them the information as a peer, like you said, and you're like, hey, did you know I ran into this call and this is the thing that we've been doing already and it's been really successful. And we have a sort of like newsletter reminder thing that goes up over in the bathroom, over the toilet. So when you've got a couple of minutes and you're sitting there, you get information. It works.
Well, I was also telling you guys that I had the privilege of seeing Teacher of Patience, which is the Emily story from Tom. And one of the nicest parts of it, I thought, was your colleague. It wasn't Matt, I can't remember his name, but he was Who was it?
No,
Brian?
Brian.
Brian. Okay, so he was telling about the impact Emily has made on him. He met Emily through Tom and his wife, obviously. But I think some of our complacent people, they do care about you. They do have a connection with you. So those of you with a personal, sense of importance, I think that is a very powerful way to get others to overcome their complacency.
Absolutely. And that's been my big push all along because of my dual role as her father and an emergency responder. I see both sides of any issue concerning her, so I try to present that to when we do our presentations. I'm not just talking to you as her dad. I'm also talking to you as a medic that has had to interact with folks like Emily, and I get it. I understand their concerns. I understand your concerns.
Yeah.
And so but it's true. Trying to get people to sit down and listen to all this.
And just slow down. One of the comments that I liked in our chat was, even first responders who are trained to move really quickly don't have to do that every time. I once had a funny conversation with a state fire marshal. I won't tell you which state it was, but he was very proud of his home safety visits. And he said he trained everybody in the fire service to do them in 7 minutes, in and out in 7 minutes. And these are high risk families, and I just looked at him and I said, boy, when we're thinking about the families and all the things they have going on, these families, I can't say hello in 7 minutes. So, so sometimes being fast doesn't always mean it's the best. Folks, we're almost to the top of the hour and there's some thank yous that I'd like to make, but I want to give the three of you another chance to, if there's one thing you want your friends on this call to know today, what would it be? Tom, I'm going to start with you.
I keep beating the patience drum. You have to be patient. That's the name of our movie. That's when we do our talks. That's Emily's title. She's the teacher of patience, and so you just have to, Brian talks about it, and Brian talks about the movie. Brian, with us today, also talks
Our Brian.
Our Brian, yeah. You've got to be patient. One thing I wanted to say real quick about resources is, when Emily was born 27 years ago, Google did not exist. I couldn't take a phone out of my pocket and Google whatever I want. Now I can. So yes, there are national databases or national groups like NVFC that are helping us do all these things, but look close too. Look around your county, around your state. There are folks like me doing what we do, and there's a guy in the next county over who's my local hero, my local version of Brian, because he has a son on the spectrum as well, and he's doing the same thing Brian does. He's put these bags together and he's getting those bags out everywhere. I have one.
Love those. I hadn't heard about.
I have my own bag that Matt gave me, but it's the local version of Brian. So just
and speaking of Brian, how about you? What's your parting words here?
I think having knowledge is power, and I think when you think it won't happen, it will. With 1 out of 44 or 54 children, depending on whose list you look at, people think autism is children. It becomes a teenager or an adult with autism. So they're 7 times more likely to have an encounter with the services. So it's not a matter of if, it's when. And if you're not prepared, you could make a devastating outcome.
Wow. Okay. And Monica?
You don't have to come up with stuff on your own. It already exists. So much of it's already out there, and there are people there ready to help you. Community risk reduction. There are a lot of resources. You were talking about home safety visits that's being updated. So it's strategicfire.org has a lot of great resources and programs that other people have done that have been proven to be successful. Great way to get some help.
And let me just ask the three of you, Stephanie Miller wants to know if you would feel comfortable sharing your contact information so that participants can directly communicate with you. Can we have a verbal yes?
Yes.
Thank you. And so, so wrapping up, let me say thank you to First Alert for sponsoring this important discussion. I will tell you, First Alert is also the sponsor of Vision 2020 and Sound Off. So we love First Alert. They are amazing supporters of some really, really important work out there. For more than 60 years, they've been committed to providing innovative home safety technologies and products to protect what matters most. One of the most known brands the world over. So for more information on them and the products they have, go to firstalert.com. I also want to thank the National Volunteer Fire Council for organizing today's discussion. NVFC is the leading nonprofit membership association and leadership association representing the interests of the volunteer fire, EMS, and rescue services. They provide resources, training, advocacy, and programs to help the volunteer emergency services thrive. You can learn more about NVFC and what they do and access resources at nvfc.org. And if you're not a member, I would encourage you to join. It only costs $21 a year and comes with a variety of benefits, such as an AD&D policy, free training in the NVFC virtual classroom, access to the Volunteer Voices member community. And remember, that came up when we were talking about where can everybody point to share direct access to some of these really particular kinds of resources. I love that idea. Also the NVFC First Responder Helpline and much more. You can learn more at nvfc.org/join. And then because you participated today, you're going to get a follow-up link that Sierra from NVFC, who's done a wonderful job organizing this session, will collect for you. New things have come on through the chat. So we'll try to gather up not only what we had in our minds to share, but what you have shared as well. I'd like to add my personal thanks to our panelists for telling your own true stories and making us appreciate how important all this is to all of us. Thank you for that. And thank you all for the privilege of your time today.